I'm Denise Kagler, and welcome to the Glassbreaker Summit 2020. I am so excited to kick off this series of one-on-one conversations with this guest, Suffolk County Sheriff Steve Tompkins. Steve Tompkins joined the Suffolk County Sheriff's Department in 2002. In 2013, he was appointed sheriff by then Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick. In November of 2014, Steve Tompkins was elected to the office. As sheriff, Steve Tompkins is responsible for all operations of the Suffolk County House of Correction, the Suffolk County Jail, and the Civil Process Division. In addition to providing care, custody, and rehabilitative support to inmates and detainees, Sheriff Tompkins oversees a management, security, and administrative staff of more than 1,000. Steve Tompkins is a past president of the Massachusetts Sheriff's Association. He is also chairman of the Board of Trustees for Roxbury Community College, and he serves as the inaugural president of the Massachusetts chapter of NOBLE, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. Sheriff Steve Tompkins is the first African-American male to serve as sheriff of Suffolk County, the most diverse county in Massachusetts. He is a true glass breaker. Welcome, Sheriff Steve Tompkins. Thanks for joining us.
I'm honored to be here. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. I am so glad to welcome you to the Glass Breaker Summit. Thanks so much for being here. So let's just dive right in. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a while now. Now, by any measure, these have been unsettling times, but especially for people of color and especially for Black men. So for Black men who want to go after their goals, who are ambitious, who have a career that they want to strive for, who want to break the glass, but they're not quite sure they're in control given everything that's going on, what's your message to them?
Well, for that individual, first and foremost, I would tell them to find a mentor. Find someone who's either walked the path that they want to walk, or someone that has life experience, but not just in life, but also in business. You see, and I think these are crucially important because you can learn from other people's mistakes. Frankly, I remember when I first years ago I used to work in the communications industry, and I had a small production company, and I wish I would have had a mentor to help me navigate the maze of all that it takes to run a business and learn from their mistakes. So I would start by saying, find a mentor. I would follow that up by saying that you need to not get discouraged very easily because there are so many obstacles placed in everyone's way. But if you're Black and a Black male, you have to work twice as hard to get half as far, you see. And so you can't let the bad times get you down. There's this saying that every no gets you closer to a yes, you see. And so you just have to have that kind of stick-to-itiveness, if that's a word, just to keep pushing yourself forward. But I maintain, I go back to the fact that you need a mentor, someone you can call and say, hey, this is what I've encountered, good or bad, and have them kind of work with you to help you take that next step forward.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of steps forward, lots of steps forward. In addition to you, for the first time in our history in Massachusetts, we have the top 3 law enforcement officials being people of color, Black folks. You, of course, as sheriff, are as police commissioner, Boston police commissioner, and the Suffolk County district attorney. At any point in history that is significant. Especially now, though, how significant is that distinction?
Well, I'll start with before the especially now. The fact that that has happened in Boston, a place that has been stigmatized by racism for many decades, to have 3 folk of color in the top 3 law enforcement positions within Suffolk County, which contains Boston, is, well, like you said, it's historic, but it also speaks loudly to the work that we've done individually and the work that we're going to do collectively. And when the communities that we serve, which is Chelsea, Winthrop, Revere, and Boston, almost 800,000 residents, 365,000 that are registered to vote. A lot of them are people of color, and they've been looking for um, people that understand their station in life. And so we start with that. Fast forward to a pandemic and the murder of George Floyd. It's really crucially important that the three of us can go into communities of color to basically listen. First and foremost, listen to what it is that they may be angsting over, and then talk about how we can bring the resources that are available to us to them. Oftentimes, people in the communities don't know where social service agencies are that can help them. Actually, a lot of times they don't even know that some of these agencies exist. And so we are in the position on any given day of being educator, psychologist, priest. You see, we wear a number of different hats, but because we look like a lot of the people that we serve, there's that immediate identification. Oh yeah, you know what I'm talking about, and they may not get that if they were talking to an officer of the court that was not of color.
Mm. So, you are a Black man. You are a member of law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
When you walk out the door every day, walk out of your house and walk into your Suffolk County Sheriff's office,
Right.
which are you first?
I'm a Black man. I mean, that's what I was born as. I was born as a Black man. I'm going to die as a Black man. Sheriff, as much as I love the job that I do here and the ability that it has given me to help people, it's a job. And so when I walk out of my house, I'm walking out as Steve Tompkins. In fact, years ago, my staff would really needle me to introduce myself as Sheriff Tompkins. And I would say to them, look, I get it, but that's a title. There were sheriffs before me. There are going to be sheriffs after me. I'm not going to get lost in the luster of the title. I will always be Steve Tompkins, and that's who I'm going to introduce myself as. Now, it's interesting because a lot of people and a lot of close friends of mine actually now call me Sheriff, more than they call me Steve, frankly, which is funny, and it's even funnier. There's 14 sheriffs in Massachusetts, and when a lot of us are together, somebody says, "Hey, Sheriff," 14 guys turn at one time. It's really kind of funny, but no, I am. Have been and will always be a Black male.
Mm. So when you talk about your being a Black male, it makes me think of branding.
Mm.
Your brand, you absolutely have a brand. I think that you would agree with that. What is
Sure.
your brand? What is the brand of Steve Tompkins?
That's a good question. An influencer. That's my brand. My job is to gather resources for my department and gather resources for the people that have voted me in to this office. And so I'm an influencer. My brand is that I won't use the word that starts with an S. You know what I'm talking about because people say it about you. No, there's another word with an S. I make stuff happen.
So I often talk to my clients about the importance of writing your own story and not letting someone else write it for you. You've seen the pitfalls of having that happen, having someone else write your story. You are an example of writing your own story. You, Sheriff Steve Tompkins, are an example of you writing your own story and telling your own story, making sure that story is authentic, making sure that it starts with you, with your authenticity, your goals, your dreams. Talk to me a little bit about that, about the importance of people writing their own story, making sure that they are the center of that story, making sure that story is authentically theirs.
Well, I think it's very important that you control the narrative of who you are. Like you just said, when others control the narrative of who you are, they are going to kind of paint the picture of what they want you to be seen as. That's, I think, a very disadvantageous place to find oneself in. you really need to be the captain of your own ship, so to speak. Not to get too cliche-ish, but you really do. You need to tell your own story. You need to control the narrative of who you are, because at some point, you're going to tweak that narrative. As you grow and as you evolve, you're going to tweak that narrative. But, Joe Blow, who may have established the narrative for you, haven't seen or felt the changes that you're about to embark on. And so they can't shift as quickly as you can. So you need to control your narrative.
So that is a good place to take a brief pause, and I'm going to introduce the audience to a new program, an online program that I'm going to be launching very soon. We will be back in 30 seconds with more of our conversation with Suffolk County Sheriff Steve Tompkins. For now, you are watching the Glassbreaker Summit 2020. Although I had a rewarding corporate career, my passion was ignited when I founded MDK Brand Management. Let me help you discover what ignites your passion and makes you come alive, even during these tough times. Mainstream to Top Tier is a 5-step formula to help professionals break through the glass ceiling. Craft your story, control your narrative. Let's start with you. Visit mainstreamtotoptier.com to learn more. Welcome back to the Glassbreaker Summit 2020. We will continue the conversation with Suffolk County Sheriff Steve Tompkins. So again, Sheriff Tompkins, thank you so much for being here. So let's continue the conversation. I want to ask you about your distinction of being a glassbreaker, because you are, as I mentioned earlier, you are the first African-American man to serve as Sheriff of Suffolk County, which is the most diverse county in Massachusetts. How does it feel to be a glassbreaker?
It was phenomenal, actually. I like it. No, very seriously, when I was a kid, you know how people would say, so what do you want to be when you grow up? You want to be a fireman, you want to be a postal worker, you want to be a cop. I used to always say, I want to have my own country. I swear to God, I used to say that. I want to have my own country. And I just felt that I'm a Leo, and, I bought the whole, that little thing, with astrology. I bought it. I'm a Leo and I need to be running stuff. I bought it. I still buy it, frankly. And so running this department actually is like running a little city. Everything that goes on outside of these walls happen inside. We have to feed people, we have to communicate with them, we have to educate them. Everything that goes on outside happens inside. And I'm that guy that is fortunate enough to work with a group of really talented people. And I emphasize really talented people, because a lot of times you can't do this stuff, at least on this level. I've got over 1,000 employees, over 1,000 inmates, $116 million budget. You can't do that stuff by yourself. You need help. And so for your glass breaker people that are listening to this, I maintain that you need to surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, or just very smart, very capable, and you have to listen. And you really have to, in some aspects, Denise, you have to check your ego. Because just because you think it's right, or just because you're the so-called leader of whatever company or organization, doesn't mean that you're always right. But when you are right, and you're right, you have to make sure everybody else knows I'm right, and the ship is going to go in this direction. But collaboration, when you talk about being a success, I think collaboration is key. You really need to be able to work with people and listen to people. So when you ask, how does it feel? I feel humble. I'm honored that I've been given this opportunity to reach back and help other people. Now, I used to work in your industry years ago in television production. Never thought I'd be sitting in this chair doing this work. But when the opportunity presented itself, I felt that I was someone who had been given a number of good chances to do things, to grow opportunities. And so now it was my turn to give back. And so as you're breaking that glass, remember that you need to bring people along for the ride with you.
Absolutely. So there are so many people who are struggling now, given the pandemic, the economic struggles because of that pandemic, because of the economy shutting down.
Right.
What do you say to people who are not sure how to move forward when it comes to making an investment in their careers, because they're just not sure what's going to happen to their futures? What do you what can we say to them to hopefully have them understand that making an investment in your career is still important?
Well, first and foremost, in my world, if it's not written down, it's not real. I would say write down what it is that you want to do. What do you want to be? Where do you want to go? Because if you can see it, you can be it. And if you don't do that, you just can't visualize that picture. And I do that often. I still do it to this day. I write the things down, the path that I want to travel, the places I want to go, the goals that I want to achieve. I write it down, and then I try to effectuate it. I try to make it happen. And oftentimes, and I thank God for Google, because oftentimes it requires research, to say, okay, I need to know about this facet of the industry or this facet of life. I need to seek out others that may have been trying to do or have done what I want to do. And I want to read their stories to see how they achieve the success that they have. And equally as important, to understand how they were able to overcome the obstacles that was placed in front of them. So write it down, research it, and don't give up. You really, really have to keep pushing as best you can. Now, it's easy for me to say. You may be a person that has 2 kids or 3 kids. You may be a single parent, and you may not have, you may have a job or 2, and so you may not have a lot of time to really accomplish what you want. But I believe that the tortoise wins the race, frankly, because in taking your time to get to where you want to be, you'll appreciate it more when you get there, number one, but you will also be fortified with the lessons, the steps that you had to take to get there.
What keeps you up at night?
Nothing. I don't mean to okay, let me think about that. Listen, I was given a book years ago. Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, or something like that was the title. Don't sweat the small things. And my takeaway from that book was things that are in my control, that I have some influence over, beautiful. Things that are out of my control, that I have absolutely no influence over, I'm not going to sweat that. I'm not going to sweat it. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not going to deal with it. I'm not going to work with it, but I'm not going to get all angst riddled. And, frankly, if I'm honest with you, Denise, I'm old enough to say, you know what, things will get better, And so I remember when I was a young lad, there were things that would trip me out. I was like, oh, why can't it be this way? Or why can't I get that? Or how come they're not listening to me? Don't they like me? Like, Sally Field? Oh, they like me. You know what I'm saying? And and so that would trouble me a little bit. But in fact, I just came from a meeting with some of the officers at my department, and we were talking about racism. And one of the things that I said to them, particularly in this pretty divisive climate that we're in right now, if somebody doesn't like me because I'm a black man, that's their luggage. It's not my luggage. That's their luggage. And so I'm not going to sweat that. I can't do anything about that. I can tell them who I am and on all that sort of good stuff, but just because of the color of my skin or the way I talk or walk, you're not going to like me? So fine. So not really. Seriously, I never thought about that. Not much. Not much keeps me up at night. Knock on wood. Yeah.
Have you ever been the target of profiling or any issues with law enforcement because you are a black man?
You know what? To tell you the God's honest truth, and I was on a forum, and that question came up a couple of weeks ago. I really haven't, right? And that's pretty wild. I really I haven't, and I thank my lucky stars. Now, that doesn't mean I haven't been stopped by police and all that sort of stuff, but a lot of that, get out your car, I'm going to search your car, I'm going to like take you. Well, actually, to tell you the truth, I actually was taken in once. Watch this. I had the proverbial busted tail light, and this cop stops me, and we go through this whole thing, and oh, that's right, I remember now. The car wasn't mine. Okay, it was a friend of mine, and I couldn't find his registration. So they had to impound the car. And this was a Latino officer, but because I was driving this car without a registration and a busted taillight, he arrested me. He arrested me, right? And took me to the district office. And I'll never forget this. So we pull up in front of the district office, right? And literally from the car to the door, if it was like 5 steps, okay, I'm giving it a couple. Get out of the car. Now, this is in the neighborhood that I live in. And this guy handcuffed me. And I said, you're going to handcuff me to walk from here to there? And he said, it's procedure or what have you, blah, 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 blah. We get inside. And then he handcuffs me to a bar. They had this bar on the wall. Handcuffs me to the bar and take my information. And then they made me give up my sneaker laces and my belt. And I said to these guys, I said, do you honestly think I'm going to hurt myself? Because this joker thought that it was a good move because of my busted tail light, to take me in. And they put me in the cell. I'm in there by myself. I'll never forget this. It was so funny. Well, actually, it wasn't funny. And I said to one of the officers walking by, I said, hey, while I'm here, because you have to get the bail bondsman or whatever to get you out, can you give me a newspaper? Since I'm in here, let me read something. And he actually got me. He gave me the Boston Herald, gave me a newspaper, and, to give you a little one telephone call, right? And so I called some friends, and I was like, I'm in jail. You got to come get me, and they did. And it was an experience. But that pales in comparison to what has happened to a lot of men of color. I've never been beat down by cops. I've never been manhandled by police officers. Like I said, I never really had. The guy took the car, but he didn't search it and all that sort of stuff. There was nothing planted in the car, so I've been fortunate in that respect. But here's the thing. Being a black person, and particularly a black male, I've walked down the street. I could be in a suit like I'm in today, and women, particularly white women, will either clutch their purse, their bag, when they see me coming. I've had women cross the street, and I'm like, wow, these kind of things happen so frequently, Denise, that it's actually been normalized. You just say, hey, it is what it is. You don't want it to happen, but when it does, at least I don't trip over it. Some people do, and they get really, really mad, and understandably, I don't.
Mm. What's next for Sheriff Steve Tompkins?
A bungalow in Bermuda on the beach with a drink and some good friends. I'm not kidding. You think I'm kidding? I'm serious. I am going to run. I run again in 2022, and I'm going to run because I don't think that my work is done. But I'm also very fascinated by the change that's going to happen at this time with the pandemic, with the killing of George Floyd, with the fact that a lot of white people are really starting to listen to us now. All the stuff that we've been saying, this is what's been happening to black people, that they were just, yeah, it really can't be that bad. Well, now they know it really is that bad. And so I want to continue to do this work for another 4 or 5 years, because there really are a lot of black men, a lot of black people, but a lot of black men caught up in the criminal justice system. Of the 1,000 or so inmates that I have here, 65% are black or Latino. That's in a Commonwealth where that same demographic is 18%. So how do you get 65 out of 18? I attribute it to ignorance and arrogance and racism. And what's going on, the climate in the country, dare I say on the globe right now, is one in which change is going to happen. I want to be a part of that. But this is not like an easy walk down the block. If you remember, Rosa Parks wouldn't give up her bus seat in 1955. And we didn't get the Voting Rights Act until 1965. It's a long time. So this struggle is a struggle that's going to go on for a while. But when you say what's next for me, what's next for me is rolling up my sleeves and just keep punching away.
Mm. And on that note, before we say goodbye to you, I love quotes. They're inspirational, they're motivational. So how about you share your favorite quote with our audience?
Sure. I have two favorite quotes. Ralph Waldo Emerson, way back when, said, "It's a luxury to be understood." And at these perilous times, I think that is so spot on. It really is a luxury to be understood, because for so long, particularly Black people and others, have not been understood. So it's a luxury to be understood. The second is from a 6th century Chinese philosopher, Lao Tse, who said, "The longest journey begins with the first step." And as I mentioned with the Rosa Parks analogy, it took 10 years from the time that she wouldn't give up her seat until we got the Voting Rights Act. And so the longest journey begins with the first step. And so I remind myself of that whenever I get anxious for something to happen really quick. Take your time. The tortoise always wins the race.
Great quotes to end on. So with that, I say thank you, Suffolk County Sheriff Steve Tompkins, for joining the Glassbreaker Summit 2020. Thank you so much.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
And to all of you, thank you for being here. So join me live tomorrow evening, 8 p.m. Eastern, in my Facebook group, Glassbreaker. We're going to break down the conversation we just had with Suffolk County Sheriff Steve Tompkins. I will answer your questions, not only about this conversation, but also about my new online career development program, Mainstream to Top Tier. Until then, be safe, be well, and I look forward to seeing you guys again very soon.